played many, many concerts all around the world, many states, many bases, many countries. And the Gary Sinse Foundation that was founded in 2011. We launched it in 2011. We just celebrated we're going into our 7th year now. How about that? So, of course, we support the USO. USO has been around a long time. Gary Sinse Foundation only been around about 7 years, but go to our website, check us out, GarySinseFoundation.org. We do a lot of things. I got very, very, very involved with our military years ago, and it all kind of accumulated. It started with the veterans in my own family, on my side of the family, and my wife's side of the family. I have many relatives in the military, but my immediate family, my grandfather served in World War I 100 years ago. He was in France 100 years ago. He drove an ambulance in France, and it was a very dangerous duty because the German war machine would pick off the ambulances. They would target the ambulances, and my grandfather was very lucky. In one convoy, there was a whole big convoy of ambulances during the Battle of the Argonne, and the Germans targeted. They got the ambulance in front of my grandfather, and they got the one behind him. Unfortunately, those folks lost their lives. My grandfather was spared at that time, but it was a very dangerous duty, a very dangerous war 100 years ago. And then World War II, not too long after that. And my grandfather's 2 sons, he had 3 sons, my dad and his 2 brothers. His 2 brothers served in World War II. One was in the Navy. He took part of the invasions of Iwo Jima and Okinawa, and that was my Uncle Jerry. My Uncle Jack was a navigator on a B-17 bomber over Europe. 30 missions on a B-17. And then my dad served in the Navy during the Korean War. And then I met my wife. I met the gal who would become my wife, and she introduced me to her brothers who served in the Army in Vietnam. 2 of her brothers, one was a combat helicopter pilot in Vietnam, 800 combat hours. The other was a West Point graduate. He served as a platoon leader, and then went back again as a captain, as a company commander, and then he went on to teach at West Point as a major. In fact, he was a TAC officer for General Scaparrotti. You know our 4-star General Scaparrotti? Scap was, my brother-in-law was his TAC officer at West Point. And General McChrystal was there at that time, General Odierno, a lot of great leaders were there at that time when my brother-in-law taught there. And then my brother-in-law went on to become a lieutenant colonel and teach at Fort Leavenworth. Unfortunately, in 1983, he was diagnosed with cancer and he passed away, but not before he rewrote the leadership manual for the Army. A manual called Field Manual FM 22-100. And FM 22-100 is still taught at Fort Leavenworth and West Point. And recently my brother-in-law was inducted into the the Fort Leavenworth Hall of Fame, which is something pretty incredible. He passed away in 1983, and just last year they inducted him into the Fort Leavenworth Hall of Fame. So he made a significant imprint on the Army. And I learned a lot from him and the Vietnam veterans in my family back in the 70s and early 80s. And they were a big motivator for me to start trying to help our Vietnam veterans at that time. How many Vietnam veterans we have here in the audience? Let's give our big Vietnam veterans a big welcome home. So I graduated high school in 1973, so that was the end of combat operations in Vietnam. I remember my parents very scared that I might be drafted. It was a difficult time for the Army, a difficult time for our country. And when I met my wife's brothers, they really educated me and changed me, and so I began to work with our Vietnam veterans in the Chicago area back in the late 70s and early 80s. And then I played the Vietnam veteran in Forrest Gump, and that was a great honor to play that character. Having known my wife's brothers and having worked with Vietnam veterans in Chicago, when the opportunity came along to audition for Forrest Gump to play a Vietnam veteran, I very much wanted to do that, and God blessed me with that, and the Hollywood gods blessed me with that, because I got the part. And that was a life-changing move, you know, it was a life-changing part, but it was not only career-changing, but it changed my life. And because of that, I got involved with the DAV, the Disabled American Veterans Organization. And they invited me to their national convention in 1994, and I've been associated with the DAV ever since. A great relationship with the DAV. The DAV actually supports my foundation some now. And all of that work after September 11th, it just was clear that with our troops deploying to Iraq and Afghanistan, you were going to need some help. You were going to need to know that people cared and people appreciated and people are grateful for what you do. And that's why I go out there all the time to try to make sure that you know that you are not forgotten for what you're doing for our country each and every day, and your families are not forgotten. That is why I started my foundation, the Gary Sinse Foundation. We're doing all kinds of cool stuff. The American people who support my foundation help to pay for us to be here tonight. So thank you to the American people. Through me and what I do, they get to say thank you to you. So remember, there's a grateful nation out there that doesn't forget what you're doing for our country. God bless you, and God bless America. Let's all stand up and sing this last song together, everybody. Thank you very much.